In this lesson, we'll continue our discussion of the bony anatomy of the upper extremity by looking at the bones of the forearm and then the bones of the hand. So the forearm actually consists of two bones. The bone that is on the thumb side of your forearm is the radius, right? It'll be the shorter of the two. And then the bone that's on the pinky side is the ulna, and obviously that's going to be the longer of the two. Let's take a look at the ulna first. Again, I'm going to divide it into proximal and distal. So this is the proximal part of the ulna. This would be the part of the ulna that is forming the elbow joint, part of the elbow joint. So this is a side view, right? A lateral view. So from a previous lesson when we had done the humerus, we introduced part of the ulna. This big chunk of bone back here, all of this is the prominence of the elbow. Right? If you were to bend your elbow and just kind of touch the point of your elbow right there, that's what you're touching. You're touching the olecranon process. Then this pointy structure right here is the coronoid process. Right? Coronoid process. We had looked at this in a previous lesson also because this goes into a part of the humerus known as the coronoid fossa. So olecranon process, coronoid process. Then this curve right here that's going to articulate with the trochlea of the humerus is known as the trochlear notch. All right? It has the same name. So olecranon, or you can say olecranon process, coronoid process, trochlear notch, all of this right here. Now, the ulna lies up against the radius, so we need a place for the radial head to rest up against the ulna. So there's a notch right here. We can see it pretty good there. That's this. Right? It's a little bit hard to see here, but if you would actually pick up the ulna and kind of put your finger in there, you would see that it's a depression. Right? So that's for the radial head to go up against the ulna, and that is called the radial notch. All right, there's another bump here called the ulnar tuberosity. Right, we're going to see that a muscle called the brachialis is going to attach there. And then the long part of the ulna going down would be the shaft. Okay, so the parts you need to know on the proximal ulna are the olecranon process, this whole big bump, coronoid process, in between trochlear notch, and then for the head of the radius, radial notch, ulnar tuberosity, and then the shaft of the ulna here. Now, if you follow the shaft all the way down to where we're going to go to the wrist, the ulna is going to become like a big rounded area. That's the big bump on the back of your wrist. If you were to look down at your forearm, at the back of your forearm, kind of on the pinky side, you've been looking at this big bump probably all of your life. That is the ulnar head, or the head of the ulna right there. Right, and then you can see this little pointy thing sticking down right here. This is known as the styloid process. I have it labeled on another slide. I just figured I'd point it out over here. All right, so down at the distal ulna, there's only two things you need to know: the ulnar head, or the head of the ulna, and then the styloid process right there, that little bump right there, little pointy part. Here's a back view. So here you can see the prominence of the elbow, the olecranon process really well. Right, the shaft goes all the way down, and then the ulnar head would be all of this round part here, and then here's your styloid process projecting down from there. The second bone, again, the bone on the thumb side, is going to be the radius. So proximally, it's very easy. There's three things I'd like you to know up here. There's the head, and that's the part that went to the capitulum of the humerus here, right? So that's the radial head. We kind of looked at that already on a previous lesson. Whenever there's a head, what's underneath it is a constricted area called the neck. And then look at this, there's a big, huge bump here. This is called the radial tuberosity. This is actually, we're going to see the attachment point of your biceps muscle. So when you go to do a curl to strengthen your biceps is contracting, it's pulling on this bump right here on your radius to do the curl. Okay, so head, neck, radial tuberosity. The long part is always the shaft, and then you're going to see the radius is going to flare out, and sticking down below is another kind of pointy area here. This is the styloid process of the radius, right? So we see there's a styloid process there of the ulna and a styloid process of the radius. Last thing on the radius, notice the radial head is going to be tucked up against the radius, so there is a notch in here also. You can see it over here even. Here's the ulnar head here going up against the radius. This would be the radial notch. Right? It receives the head of the radius. Again, it's a little bit hard to see when the bones are together like that. Right? Again, here it is too. Again, here again the head of the radius up against the excuse me, the head of the ulna, I apologize, head of the ulna up against the radius, right? So that's the radial notch. Okay, so that's our forearm. So the last part of the upper extremity that we want to look at is going to be the wrist and the hand. So our wrist is made up of 8 carpal bones, right? Carpal means wrist. 4 of the carpal bones are going to be in a row that is proximal, the proximal row, and then the other 4 are going to be distal. So here's an example. This is a posterior view of the hand, and you can see here's the radius and the ulna. Right, here's the styloid process of the radius. Here's the styloid process of the ulna, and now the hand, right, the wrist is kind of going right in between those 2 styloid processes. So if we count 1, 2, 3, and then that little bump on the outside 4, those are the 4 bones of the proximal row, right? Proximal means kind of closer to the shoulder. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, those bones are the distal row, right? They're further away from the shoulder. So let's take a look at them. I usually go from the thumb side, this is the thumb over here, to the pinky side, right? And again, remember the radius is on the thumb side just to show that everything's nice and consistent. So I'm going to go from the thumb side to the pinky side. Right? So the first bone is going to be called the scaphoid bone. The second one is the lunate. The third one is the triquetrum, and the little pointy one attached to it is the pisiform. Notice only the scaphoid and the lunate articulate with the forearm, right? So this is really the attachment point of our wrist to our forearm. It's actually these 2 little bones right here, right? So scaphoid, lunate, triquetrum, pisiform. Going also from the thumb to the pinky side, trapezium, that's articulating with the thumb here, trapezium, trapezoid, capitate, and then the hamate. So those are our 8 carpal bones. The bones that form the palm of our hand are known as the metacarpals. So all of these bones are the metacarpals, right? So there's one in the thumb, one in the pointer, the middle finger, one in the ring finger, and then one in the pinky finger. The remaining bones here, right, in the 4 digits and the thumb, are known as the phalanges. Now notice in the thumb there are only 2 phalanges. This would be the proximal phalange. This one would be the distal phalange. Then in the remaining fingers, right, from the pointer to the pinky, each finger has 1, 2, 3. So the one closest to the shoulder, let's say, is the proximal phalange. The one furthest away is the distal, and then the one in between we're going to call the middle. Right? So each one of the fingers here that isn't the thumb is going to have 3 phalanges, a proximal, a middle, and a distal. So what are these Roman numerals right here? In medicine especially, we document by not saying, a patient broke their pointer finger. I mean, would you be wrong? know, but the way we would document it is this. The thumb is digit number 1, the index finger is digit number 2, the middle finger 3, the ring finger is digit number 4, and then the pinky is digit number 5. So let's just say a patient had a fracture in this bone right over here. The way you would document that is this is the middle phalange of the 4th finger. Or you could just say the 4th middle phalange. So this is just an anterior view where you can see again all the fingers, the phalanges, and the metacarpals. It's just you're seeing the carpal bones from the other side, right? So here's your scaphoid, lunate, triquetrum, and we get a better view of the pisiform, right? Then here on the thumb side, attaching to the thumb, trapezium, trapezoid, capitate, and then the hamate would be this bone over here. This big thing here is what we call the hook of the hamate, believe it or not. It's a big, big hook. And that's basically it. So we're going to have our metacarpals here and then our phalanges just from the front. Okay, so that takes care of our forearm bones, the radius, the ulna, and then our carpal bones, 8 carpal bones, and the metacarpals, and then the finger bones, which would be the phalanges.